Hey, everybody, it is Trags, Mike Petraglia, back with another episode of the JungleRoar podcast. And I'm welcoming back old friend James Rapien of allbengals.com. Does a tremendous job with the Locked On podcast, the only daily podcast covering your Cincinnati Bengals. And he has the apparel to prove it. You want to, there you go. There you go. I just wanted to make sure I got that brand recognition on there for you. We have survived the 2022 NFL draft. And look, I think the Bengals accomplished what they wanted to. Did they get a star name out of the deal? That remains to be seen. We all know that it takes at least 3 years to really, truly evaluate a draft. You would agree with that, James?
Don't tell that to Jamar Chase or Joe Burrow, but generally, yes.
I would say generally 3 years. That doesn't mean in 3 years they aren't going to be even better than they were in their rookie years. But the point is, it usually takes 3 years to assess just how successful a particular draft pick was. And we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and I told you I love Daxton Hill. I did not think the Patriots would give up on him and let him go and drop in the draft. Lo and behold, they did, and he went to the Bengals at 31. First of all, your general impressions of Daxton. You had a great, by the way, kudos to James Rapien on si.com and allbengals.com. You had a nice 38-minute interview with him in his locker stall when the rookie came to visit on Friday after the first round. Great job by you.
38 minutes. That's what you run the 40-yard dash in. If we're talking about Mike Petraglia and, his 40-yard dash combine time. That being said, yeah, I did sit down with Dax and asked him, about anything and everything in between. It was actually 8 minutes for those that actually believe Trags. Don't do that. But
hyperbole, but go ahead.
Yeah, but no, I like Dax a lot. And I think he's cut from that same Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase. Things aren't too big for me cloth. Now, we need to see him on the field and all of those things, but just his temperament. He was exhausted when I talked to him and went through the ringer, talked to us as a whole for about 20 minutes or so in the news conference room, gets interviewed by Dan Horde, then gets interviewed by Fox 19. Then I interview him. Then he went through, I think Channel 9 interviewed him, and then the writers interviewed him again. And it was just one after another, after another, after another. And that was on like an hour of sleep. So it's tough to do. And the other part is it's not like he was used to the in-person stuff as much. I imagine they got back to that a little bit, but during the college football playoff, they did not. And that was not the case when he was at Michigan. So that was good to see him, shake his hand, talk to him in person. Overall, you mentioned the Patriots and Dax Hill, and they obviously moved down and took Cole Strange. Well, the Bengals got a better player later in the draft. Like it's crazy. I think me and you are the only two, I think truly in Cincinnati media that are as high on Dax Hill as we are. And I can tell you this, the Bengals are ecstatic that he fell to them at 31. And I think he makes them a lot better. And, part of that is his attitude, but a lot of that is the playmaking we saw at Michigan.
So Evan Lazar, kudos to my colleague at CLNS Media. I remember bringing his name up to you, I think a month or two ago. It was quite a while ago when he started really breaking down film. And he said, take a look at this kid because he is the kind of plug and play safety that could go into a secondary and actually even play corner. And there's just so many ways that he can fit into a type of defense that Lou Anarumo runs that he'd be useful right away. And, I just paid particular attention to his film, and I did. And that's why I thought, at that time, it would be a fascinating opportunity for the Bengals. I just didn't think he would drop to them.
No, I didn't either. And that's the thing is you look at him and he can do it all. And, if you want to ask him to play deep and play that safety spot, people were talking about him being Jesse Bates' replacement. He can do that, but he can also play with Bates and be a perfect fit alongside Jesse Bates. And there aren't many safeties that have that ability, that versatility.
Right.
And he's one of them. The other part of this is, as far as this year is concerned, it doesn't make anyone happy to see Von Bell in coverage against some top tight ends. And that's why Trey Flowers played a role. And Trey Flowers has great size. He looks like an NBA player. more so than he does
Long
a football
arms,
player.
great tackle.
Long arms, long legs, yeah, real high waisted. And I look at Dax Hill, and he's not that, but he's sticky in coverage, man. And I think he's going to get stronger and be able to go up against these tight ends. And so that's the exciting part, is that I think it's going to allow Von Bell to do more of what he's best at, allow Jesse Bates to continue to do what he's best at, and Dax Hill can still be on the field. Because I think that was the puzzling thing to a lot of people that hadn't got on the Dax Hill train or knew much about him, is they see safety and they're like, oh, well, clearly Jesse Bates is gone. I don't necessarily think that that's the case. And from a football fit standpoint, I think it makes a ton of sense. And you do deserve credit. You were the first on the Dax Hill train. I completely unloaded everything and jumped on board and put all of my stock there. But it took me a while to get caught up draft wise, Trags. This is the latest I had gotten a full grasp, I think, on the draft. It was probably about a week prior to the draft. And it's because, unlike you, Mr. I covered the Patriots for 3 decades, I had never had to worry about a deep playoff run, and I didn't know what that was like. And so it kind of changed and switched up my body clock. I was at the combine, and much like the Bengals coaching staff, it was just like, what guys are they meeting with? Like I couldn't even, keep them all straight, but it was good to, it was good to get on the same page that I usually am before the draft. And Dax Hill was one of those top guys when I came, and got all of my info and insight together.
To quote or paraphrase Zach Taylor Tuesday at his press conference at Paul Brown Stadium, the hope is that you're going to be going through that quite a bit in the next several years, and this is going to repeat often. That Zach Taylor was talking about that with regard to a shortened off-season workout program that the Bengals are going through this year. He's happy to, shave some time off of it if it means going deep into February or, mid-February to get there. But anyway, speed. If there's one play and one characteristic that really, I think, wraps up or summarizes the Bengals draft class at least at the top of the class, it is speed. And if there's one play you want to go back and watch Daxton Hill, Google Daxton Hill, Najee Harris. And I believe it was a opening game, Cotton Bowl or Peach Bowl, something like that. It was the beginning of the year when Michigan played Alabama. And Dax Hill comes downhill from his safety position and tackles Harris in the backfield. And you're like, wow, that is some sort of speed on a terrific running back. Did you remember that play? Did you see that play when you were looking at film?
Yep. Yeah, I did. And it's kind of funny. I mean, he's going to be asked to do that exact thing,
right,
for the Bengals, right? Tackle Najee Harris, who's one of the best young running backs in the NFL and on the Steelers. But that's the thing that, to me, that's why he's such a good fit with Jesse Bates, because the one thing that Bates struggles at times is tackling.
Yep.
And Dax Hill, he's not big, right? 6'1", 190, built like a corner. This dude hits, and he is not afraid to hit, and he's going to get stronger. There's no doubt about that. Hasn't really added a bunch of weight since high school, so I think that part could be interesting. Does he add 10 pounds more of muscle over the next year or two? I could see him doing that. And so if he hits that way at the NFL level and bulks up a little bit, then yeah, I still think we'll have that range and that speed. I think you can do that, but you also have the body that's going to be able to withstand, big hits on Najee Harris and these other guys. Because Najee Harris is a freak. He's a big dude.
He's only is Daxton Hill 21, and like Jesse Bates came into the league very young. Dax Hill will come into the league very, very young. He's an undergraduate declaree out of college. So he had a year left of eligibility, comes in at 21. And everything I've seen, he's going to be able to handle the rigors of the NFL. Tyson Anderson, I love that choice out of Toledo as a safety. And Cam Taylor-Britt. What do you like about Cam Taylor-Britt that you saw on tape?
Well, the first thing that you mentioned is his speed. And it's not just his speed for me, and that's obviously part of it, the 4.38. He's athletic. He's really athletic. And he's a guy that, to me, if you're looking at the cornerbacks that were there at 31, because that's what everybody was talking about, cornerback, Andrew Booth, always there. You got to take him. Oh, well, maybe it's Kyler Gordon and not Andrew Booth. How big of a downgrade is it from those dudes? Andrew Booth, clearly there were some medical issues and medical red flags
Patellar.
versus a guy like
Yes.
versus a guy like Cam Taylor-Britt, right? And it's like, okay, like both guys probably end up being Eli Apple's backup, but can compete and push Eli Apple. And you never know. And I'm talking about in year one, but he's got all the traits you're looking for a successful, to be a successful corner. You know, he's got good size, he's got good length. He's got all the athletic traits. And so that's what you're looking for. And so I don't think the Bengals pigeonholed themselves into cornerback at 31. Obviously they didn't. And I'm proud of them because I think 8 years ago, Trags, they would have. I think they would have just taken the best corner available, and that's what they would have done. It felt like that when they took Drake Kirkpatrick with 17th overall in 2012. He's just the best corner there. We need a corner. Well, no, it can't be that. That's not the draft. The good teams don't draft that way, right? Need matters, but so does value. And I think the Bengals, they get that 1-2 punch where they plug their biggest need in most people's opinions at corner with Cam Taylor-Britt, while also getting Dax Hill. So I look at it as almost like a combo package. But no, I like Taylor-Britt a lot. And I think he's going to bring some juice, as he liked to say, some juice to the Bengals secondary. And wouldn't be shocking, by the way, if he surpasses Eli Apple. And the best thing would be, Trags, is if Eli Apple was so motivated from the criticism, the 1-year deal after playing his best season in the NFL, and he goes out there, has a career year, and Cam Taylor-Britt can learn. And that doesn't mean he's not going to play, because he's still going to play as the fourth corner, but sit behind him. I think that would be the best case. Worst case, well, neither one plays well, but I don't think that'll be the case.
So I'm glad you brought that up about how the Bengals drafted even 5 years ago with Marvin. And this isn't to throw Marvin under the bus, but Marvin would see talent and need, and he would draft to that along with Duke. I think the difference is, and the progression with the Bengals organization, and this is what is impressive to me. The reason Zach Taylor brings up character is not only what you do off the field, but it's on the field, how you comport yourself, and how does that character fit in their talent, their skill level, fit in the schemes that they're running. I think the Bengals are much more in tune with that. And I think they're much more nuanced with that, to use a modern age word that gets thrown around a lot. The nuance is much more refined with these Bengals and the front office. And I think that's where Duke Tobin and Zach Taylor deserve a lot of credit. That's why you don't, like you just said minutes ago, you don't just plug and play the so-called best available talent and put it in at cornerback. It has to be, is this the kind of player Lou Anarumo can envision working in his scheme?
Yep. No, I totally agree with that. And I think especially towards the end of Marvin's era, there was a disconnect between the front office, specifically Duke Tobin. And I'm not reporting, but I just, the way they drafted, Marvin didn't want John Ross. Duke Tobin loved the idea of adding speed to the secondary. And people are gonna be like, oh, well, Marvin was right. Not necessarily, because he wanted OJ Howard, and OJ Howard hasn't worked out either. So there's a little
stunningly so today. By the way, that's another subject, but I am shocked that OJ Howard hasn't been productive in the NFL, but go ahead.
In on paper, Ross made a lot of sense at the time, right? And it just didn't work out, and that's what it is. Auden Tate didn't play as much as I thought the front office might have wanted him to early in his career, because Marvin and the coaching staff wasn't on the same page. And so I think that's part of it. And so when you go get your guy, and I think Zach Taylor was very much a Duke Tobin guy, not that they only hired him because of that, but I think it was part of it. It's easier to be in sync from the jump, and they have been. And you look at it, I think Cam Taylor-Britt, physical corner. I think of Chidobe Awuzie when he's on the island and has to come up and tackle, these different wide receivers that are getting screen passes, and they're explosive players. Cheeto had a bunch of big tackles like that. That's what Lou envisions, is these dudes that can run, that they can cover, they can be sticky in man coverage, they're comfortable in zone, and they can come up and hit you. Well, guess what Cam Taylor-Britt can do? All of those things, because he moved all over the field. He played a little bit of safety. He's going to be an outside corner, played a little bit of nickel, but he's moved all over the field. So he's comfortable being one-on-one with these receivers and going man-to-man when needed, has the athleticism to have success. in that range too. So, and by the way, Cheeto was not a first rounder, and the Bengals identified him when he was drafted by, a second rounder, and he's turned out quite all right. And I think Cam Taylor-Britt, they have the same sort of feelings about him, that he can do all the things, run, cover, hit, and play multiple spots if they need him to. I don't think that's their plan for him as of now. But it's a really good fit for Lou Anarumo and company.
I tweeted this a little while ago, actually a couple of days earlier in the week. And my favorite anecdote, you brought up Cheeto and the ability to tackle. My favorite anecdote from the draft was Lou Anarumo telling all of us in the media that he showed film to every defensive candidate that he brought in. The play that Cheeto made late in the game with about 2 minutes and 30 seconds left against the Titans in Nashville on none other than Derrick Henry, bringing him to the ground, making it a second and long, where if he doesn't make the tackle, Jesse Bates is nowhere around because he's on the other side of the field. Would have taken him a while to get there. He gets Derrick Henry to the ground. And it was an incredibly important play that set up second and long. And eventually, obviously, the Bengals forced the turnover, get the interception and the game-winning field goal. I love that anecdote.
Yeah, I do too. And that's what they need. And so the thing that I really like about what the Bengals did is you look at these defensive backs, right? Daxton Hill, Cam Taylor-Britt, and Tyson Anderson. All three of them have high-end relative athletic scores, right? And yes. That's the RAS.football that people look at, and it's become commonplace. I mean, you've probably looked at it for years, right? But I have, but most fans didn't, and I think it's pretty common now that people look it up. All right, where is he percentage-wise? Well, you want athletes. You want guys that can freaking fly and hit and are physical and have all those. Like, that's what you want. And so can you find those type of guys throughout the draft? Because if so, and they produced in college, well, the hit rate on them being a productive NFL player goes way up. And guys like Dre Kirkpatrick, guys like Darqueze Dennard, and I keep referring to those two because they weren't high-end athletes. They didn't run under 4.4. They didn't do those type of things. Now, of course, compared to the average person, great athletes, but compared to high-end NFL cornerbacks, they're just okay. And so from the jump, if you're taking those guys in round one, especially, it's tough to see them, become Pro Bowlers, become all pros, become what you want in that range. And I look at these guys. If you told me Tyson Anderson ended up starting for the Bengals for a contract, wouldn't shock me, because look at that profile. Look at what he's done at Toledo. Look at all the special team stuff he did, all of those things.
Special teams, it's not insignificant.
And it's not. And so that's the thing is when you look at the profile and you look at these guys and you look at their college production, it's like, man, they check a lot of boxes, and they're not going to get them all right, but I see the vision and I understand it. They clearly wanted to get faster in the secondary and bolster that defense after addressing the offensive line and free agency. And they certainly did that. I like the picks. I really do.
Yeah, me too. And I like the fact that they had an idea of what they wanted to do going into the offseason, and they have followed it up, and not only through free agency. They didn't just go into the draft saying, well, we got done what we wanted to do in free agency. Now we'll just play it haphazardly in the draft and see how the chips fall. No, they had a plan. We're going to do what we absolutely need to do with the offensive line and free agency. They did that. We're, like you just said, they're going to go out and get speed in the secondary to keep pace with all of these wide receivers that are jumping teams and crisscrossing the AFC and the NFC, actually primarily coming from the NFC to the AFC. Hello, Buffalo Bills and Kansas City Chiefs, Miami Dolphins. Obviously, the Bengals are trying to keep pace with the speed element in the game, and I think they've done that. Two quick words. Cordell Volson, quick words, if you will, on Cordell Volson and Zach Carter. What do you think?
Zach Carter felt like a reach, right? Just based on where he went versus the consensus board. And most analysts
still there.
Most analysts had him. Yeah. And Perrion Winfrey, the prototypical 3 technique. I think what the Bengals did with Zach Carter is they saw a couple things. One, high-end athlete. Not going to say elite, but still tested like a high-end athlete. 2, more versatile than Perry and Winfrey. Winfrey is strictly a 3-tech. I'm going to get after the quarterback. I've never made a tackle against a running back in my life because I play in the Big 12 type of player, right? Zach Carter's not that. This dude's in the SEC, and he's hit running backs, and he's had to deal with that. They think, they're going to start him at 3-tech, but I think they're going to move him between the 3-tech, 5-tech. They like the versatility part of it. And there weren't many guys like that in this draft. So in all of our eyes, including mine, I mean, it felt like a reach. In their eyes, they're like, there's not many of these guys left. We have him ahead of Winfrey. Let's take him. And he really was productive at Florida, 20 plus tackles for loss over the past 2 years, 8 sacks last year. This dude was productive. So I like it. I like the player. That's how I've kind of said, I like the player, don't love the value. And it would have been hard to get great defensive tackle value where the Bengals were drafting in this class. So I understand that. As far as Cordell Volson, look, you needed a lineman. And I'll tell you what this is. This is Frank Pollock. I think this is for the first time. I don't think Billy Price was necessarily Frank Pollock's guy.
Neither do I.
In 2018. I think he was okay with Price and like Price's mentality last year. I don't think Jackson Carman was Frank Pollock's guy. I feel pretty confident in saying that. This Cordell Volson kid feels like it's Frank Pollock's guy. And maybe he finally put his fist on the table and said, look, I get it. You spent money in free agency. Let me pick one of my guys here. Let me find one that fits me. And, a lot of people were on the athleticism part of it with Volson. But if you take those athletic scores and move them to offensive guard versus offensive tackle, he projects as a high end, again, not elite, but 80th percentile, high end athlete. And so I like it. I think they're getting a mature adult, and that's, I think, what they need. And, who starts at left guard? To me, they keep mentioning Deontay Smith at tackle. I think Deontay Smith is going to be the guy that ends up grabbing that, because he is an adult. And it wouldn't have shocked me if Frank Pollock was on board with that as well, the Deontay Smith pick. But the Cordell Volson screams Frank Pollock says, hey, let me get one of these glass eaters. I don't care if he played for NDSU.
Okay, we're moving on to the rival team in the AFC North. That would be the Baltimore Ravens. Everybody and their brother had them having a stupendously great draft over the weekend. I did not read one report that didn't put them at A or A+. And it started with Tyler Linderbaum. They got him, and they've added depth across the board. David Jabo, who is coming off an Achilles injury and probably won't be ready, but he is somebody that could obviously have an impact over the middle, on the defensive line. And they've added Kyle Hamilton, the safety. What did you think of what the Ravens were able to do?
You look at it, and Kyle Hamilton feels like a value pick. Tyler Linderbaum, everyone knows how I felt about him. At the same time, they traded their best receiver. And that's the part of it that I think gets lost in the shuffle, because everyone looks at what the Ravens did. Oh, man, they killed it. Look at them.
Right.
Typical Ravens draft. It's great. Oh, man. And I like the players. There's no doubt about that. But what are we talking about here? We're talking about a weapons league. This isn't a hammered out type league. This is a Joe Burrow says, we're going to throw on you all day long, and you're not going to be able to stop it. And even if you do stop it, you're going to have to put up a bunch of points to stop us too. And Patrick Mahomes is the same way. And all these teams are the same way. And I look at the Ravens and I get it. Lamar Jackson's really damn good. Rashad Bateman and who else? Devin Duvernay. I liked him coming out of Texas.
Duvernay is there other
Tylan Wallace. I don't know any of these other guys. So much so, Trags, I'm looking at it and I'm going to call the Ravens and offer my services, because maybe I could make that, the team as a slot receiver. I mean, I'm like half joking, half serious. What is this? The Mark Andrews show? I like Charlie Kohler. Like now that they drafted him and Isaiah Likely.
Yep.
I like their draft. I do. I really do. Cause I like the players and I like the value. And you look up and down the draft and it's like, oh, I know him and I like him and I like him. And Ojabo could be the future of their pass rush. At the same time, it's a weapons league. And last I checked, Lou Anarumo and company they're going to be ready for a bunch of different weapons, and the Ravens don't have them. You know, if you're just going to run this little Lamar Jackson offense with no true threats downfield, good luck.
And the Buffalo Bills, real quick, because I know you got to get going here. Kaiir Elam was the corner that a lot of experts had or mocked going to the Bengals. He winds up with the Bills. He adds his talents to a already loaded defense. And if you take a look at the Bills on both sides of the ball, I think they had a very solid draft, but to add a guy like that and plug him in to a corner position on a defense that obviously added Von Miller in the offseason. And you take a look at their secondary already, Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, Tre'Davious White, and Elam on the other side. That's going to be a tough combination to beat.
Yep, no doubt about it. They're loaded. You know, they're loaded. They're stacked. You mentioned the defense. I love Elam. You know, I think he's a really damn good football player. And you had him opposite White, who's coming back from injury. You got a super athletic linebacker in the middle, and Tremaine Edmonds, Von Miller. You know, yeah. I mean, Greg Rousseau, Ed Oliver. I mean, you look up and down, they're going to get heat on you, and they're going to be able to run and cover and do all that stuff. And so that's it's a tough defense. And here's the thing: the underrated signing, I think, this offseason for the Bills. Last year, they went and got Emmanuel Sanders, hoping that he have some juice left. And he was okay, but didn't have that kind of juice. We saw what Gabriel Davis brought them in the playoffs against the Chiefs. I think Davis and Diggs, that's great. They signed Diggs to an extension, but you know what they did? Trags, they went out and got Jamison Crowder.
Yep.
And it reminds me of like this under the radar, like Brady in his prime. Oh, we're just going to sign this slot veteran receiver. And guess what? Crowder's got juice left. And he was a guy, to me, I was like, man, I know the Bengals probably aren't going to go after a receiver in free agency, but if you could get one, that might be the one. And I wouldn't be shocked if he catches 90, has 90 catches this year, because I think he's better than Cole Beasley. He comes without the distractions, and he wants to win. Everybody wants to win, of course, but he has not won in his career consistently. Jamison Crowder, I think, is going to be really, really productive for the Bills.
He does an amazing job covering the Bengals and the NFL for allbengals.com. And you can hear his podcast, watch his podcast daily on Locked On Podcast Bengals with James Rapien. Follow him on Twitter at James Rapien, all one word. Anything else, James, before we let you go?
No, that's it, Trags. I appreciate you having me. It's an exciting time. See, you're used to covering a winner. It's uncharted territory for me. So it's been fun, and hopefully we get to do it, because it's a hell of a lot more fun than covering a team that's won 6 games in 2 years.
Correct. And we will see you as the rookies report next week and OTAs get underway. James, thanks.
Thanks, Mike.
Take care.